What's up guys? Coach Summer here at the Flow Shala, and I'm so stoked to share my personal movement practice with you guys. So you'll see in this training practice, which is about 15-20 minutes long, exactly what I do when I step into flow training practice. Now, flow is different than conditioning. Conditioning, I often will use timing protocols, I'll use HIIT protocols. I'm generally staying with like 5 exercises. In my personal flow practice, I really work simple to complex. So I'm gonna be moving through all these amazing tools, starting with the small clubs and working all the way up to the bigger and larger clubs, pretty heavy, and the steel mace as well. So I just wanna kind of walk you through so that if you're starting to progress your practice into flow state training, you have some ideas and a framework to work within. All right, let's get started. So first thing you'll notice is joint mobility as the primer. So generally I go through a full head to toe joint mobility, moving first in a linear pattern, then laterally, and then in a circular pattern. I go through all of my movable joints, and what that does is it creates heat and it also primes those neural pathways that I'm gonna be using when I train with my tools. So you'll find I oftentimes put my joint mobility drills into yoga asana, so things like kneeling lunge to chest expansion, or integrating that bind here, or kneeling lunge with thoracic circles, just working on proprioceptive awareness and balance. So I like to kind of blend my into flow practice with my yoga practice. Secondly, I always like to start my workouts with a little bit of club work to prime my shoulders. So you'll see I'm going through the classic cast pattern. So first moving from simple to complex. What I'm looking for here is I'm always having full glute activation, full core activation, and shoulder pack and crown to coccyx alignment. I don't want to leak power, so I don't want to have my elbow dangling in the air. I always want to marry it to the rib, and I'm really working on a consistent pathway where the club is being taken back behind my shoulder with control, and then exhaling as I bring the club down. Then we transition into that lateral plane, so moving into modified side flag, into order, rotating out, side flag order, and what this does is it just primes my rotator cuff so that I can get full fascial tension, full activation when I'm training. And then to take that into the most complex pattern, we'll weave those together, shoulder cast to side flag to cast. And this is also called a shield cast. So this is a really excellent way to prime your shoulders before you get started. I highly recommend. You can also do it from a kneeling position. So closing the kinetic chain a bit, and you'll see that I did that with the heavy clubs as well. So once I prime my shoulders, I'm ready to rock and roll, then I move into my heavy clubs work. Now, the most important thing when you're yielding a club is that you have a neutral wrist, so you don't want to be here. You want to make sure that your wrist is nice and flat. You either have 2 hands on the club or 1. You'll see my first exercise, I was just working slow grinds. So this is a drill that's designed to build absolute strength and stability. So I'm really contracting in a hollow body position here, squeezing my back glute on, creating torque in my legs. I can use my helper finger here. Notice I'm angling my club back to find leverage first. Instead of just dropping it back into the pocket, I want to feel the leverage the entire way, which is why I like having a couple fingers here to help. And then you'll notice after we did just the slow grinds, or after I did the slow grinds, I progressed that into a level 1 casting lunge. So starting with feet about hip distance apart, inhale, back position, exhale, pull down with control. Notice I'm creating torque with the legs the whole time. I'm in a hollow body position, and I exhale as the club comes down. That eventually turns into a dynamic level 2 tactical lunge. So you can do this with opposite leg or same leg. Either one's fine. But the whole goal is that you're starting to marry those movements together so that when you land, your back glute is fully on, your core is engaged, your shoulders are packed, everything is super, super solid. And of course, the next progression from that is adding a swing. So swings are generally a ballistic exercise. So adding that layer of complexity where you surge forward, you land in the lunge, and you marry all that stuff that you just practiced, helps to increase the neuroplasticity in your brain so that you're training these dynamic movement patterns effortlessly, and the exercises start to breathe you. And this takes a long time to train, so don't expect to do it right away, but start somewhere so that you can achieve more complexity in your training. So we've got our front swing, elbows locked, shoulders packed, squeezing the glutes at the top, adding a little power, front swing to order. You can do either side. I tend to like the hand that's closest to the knob to be on the bottom. And then when I step into my lunge, I come into the opposite leg lunge. Again, I'm toning my back glute. Common misalignment in athletes is to do front lunges with just the quad, but we're really trying to recruit the posterior chain a lot here so that we can pull ourselves back with the help of the back leg and land. And then our next progression, the degrees of freedom do indicate different layers of complexity as well. Heaving is moving up and down. Pitching is moving forward and back with the spine, or flexion extension. So this would be a heave and a pitch pattern. And then a surge pattern would be moving or traveling forward. So we covered those. Those are the most accessible generally for general everyday population. When we start moving side to side in lateral motion and in rotation or yaw, that's when things start to become a little more complex. So you'll note I begin with just regular side swings, and I'm using a pretty heavy club. I've been practicing with clubs for a long time. I recommend starting with smaller ones like 10s or 15s. Make sure that you have full grip conformation, shoulder pack, find your hip hinge or sit back so that your knees are back behind your ankles as much as possible. We don't want to go into our squat here. We want to go here. And then notice my nose lines up with my club here to here. Here, I'm looking at my club so that my body actually rotates in order to achieve that swing. Versus if I didn't rotate, what would happen is my arms are pulled off and there's like a little bend here, and I'm not training that rotational pattern, which I want. So here it goes, side swing. Rotation, notice one shoulder drops under. Got a power breath at the top. Then I progress that to order, which I already covered before in my heave and surge pattern. And I'm squeezing this thing hard. Like shoulders are packed, full grip conformation, eye gaze on that club, cast, swing, and catch. Notice my cast technique. I'm not shooting up and over. I'm trying to be as efficient as I can, driving the club away from me, letting it find its natural trajectory. And then I shock absorb. So I'm working on the eccentric muscle control, which is the down swinging phase, is my emphasis in this particular exercise. And then you always want to switch your hand grips to the opposite hand when you try switching sides. So preload, find your sit back, find your slight rotation, pack those shoulders. Begin with the simple, starting with the side swings. Side swing to order. And I think eventually I progress this to a clockwork squat, which is squatting, order, semicircle swing, order, squat, order. Don't forget about that order moment. Semicircle swing, catching all of that force with the core. And eventually it can land. You're using your torque, your leverage as you come into it. And this is definitely a great exercise to get you into flow state because your spatial awareness is really challenged. You've got this giant club swinging at your body, and your job is to shock absorb it with ease and look really sexy doing it. So if you don't like to dance like me, don't worry, you can do your own dance moves, but I tend to do something that puts me into parasympathetic. For me, that's dance, so you'll see that I'm kind of moving. It's kind of like a qigong style, like expression of movement. So do whatever you'd like in your recovery when you're training flow. Another technique is the chug breath, which is an inhale through the nose and exhale. And what I found is if I can get myself into a little bit of a dance and doing that deep inhale with a suspended pause, I can actually get my heart rate down really, really quickly as well. So I've been just playing with that in my own personal flow practice. Next, we move into mace work, steel mace. So generally when I start with my mace, I'm using a 10-pounder. I start with just 360 swings, block down pull. This just clears the energetic field. Really makes me feel like a warrior, which is always fun. Switching sides, you can switch hand positions. Generally, the top hand will indicate which direction your mace will swing, but it's not imperative that it always swings that way. You can switch it up and go either way, it's totally fine. And then I just reviewed some of those same patterns. The lunge, which is our surge pattern. And with the mace, there's a couple different options. You can do ballistic switches, where you're generating torque with the hands. And torque just means I'm ripping the mace apart as it travels, I'm crushing as it arrives at the landmark. And what this does is recruits my lats, keeps my posture nice and tall, and it's just nice to distribute the load of the mace through the entire kinetic chain by generating torque in all the joints. And then other variations or options, over grip, moving into uppercut. And then adding the surging lunge. I definitely see a lot of times in classes, it's really difficult for people to get that uppercut. This arm always wants to do something funky. So that little trick, start here, and then rotate your globe towards the front of the room, come to crossbody bottom, and then punch your knuckles down towards the floor. So really visit that landmark. So we want to go here first, and then here. A lot of times people will just kind of want to go straight out to here and hope for the best, but it really helps if you take the path less traveled, visit your landmarks. Your coaches will be very happy at the FlowShala virtual studio. All right, and then we did this really cool fancy move, which is the uppercut lunge. I don't know, I call this like the arm weave. So in order to break that down, I do this in a lot of my steel flow classes at the FlowShala virtual studio. So I'll do an uppercut and then stack to order with a reverse guard position and my top hand is high. So that's like level 1.5. So level 1, we've got our lunge, and then we stack. 1.5, start again, just drill that, moving from simple to complex. And eventually we come through that stack, drag the back leg back, and then find this sort of arm threaded position here. And then I come out of it the same way I went to it. So notice I'm revisiting that order position, same thing I did with my clubs. And then my hand goes up, over, slides down, point, and guess what? I'm in a shoulder pack. My back glute is on. And I start on the opposite side. I know that was a lot. Let's try it again. Don't expect to get it on the first day. You got to start with the basics, foundations. So we uppercut lunge, we stack. Do that a couple times. Get it into our nervous system where we don't feel like we're going to whack ourselves in the head. Key marker of flow state is confidence and ease in the movement. Uppercut. Stack for a brief moment. Do the arm thread as you come into a reverse lunge hold. And then slow motion matrix style. That was not slow motion on the camera. That was actually me moving in slow motion. Try it out. You'll have fun. And embrace the suck. If you're not perfect at it right away, that means you're doing it right and you're pushing yourself out of your normal comfort zone. Next phase, we move into the light mace. Now, I founded this little system called Steel Mace Vinyasa. It's a program, there's level 1, level 2, there's 12 workouts with 12 matching flows, and it builds on simple to complex, very similar to how we did in this workout. We're always starting with the most simple moves and building on layers of complexity through different degrees of freedom, different drop swings, different rotational patterns. So a couple moves we did. We started with our big wheel, or big arc. So this is called a reverse guard position. Top hand is facing away, cartwheel down. If you're curious about any of my online courses, just go to flowshala.com and click the tab that says online courses, and you'll see Steel Mace Vinyasa there, level 1, level 2. You'll see Kinesiolyoga. You'll see Steel Mace Flow with the heavy clubs or heavy mace. So we've got our big wheel, right? We're turning lateral bend, we're working our obliques. Then we progress that into this crazy move you probably never seen before called a Warrior 2 lunge. Now, this is not a pattern that a lot of humans train. So we are trying to create mobility in this hip. So we're doing this cool like roundhouse kick, reaching out, stabilizing, flexing the foot, pressing the mace overhead and holding. This is a Warrior 2 lunge. We return back to the starting position. Roundhouse kick. Ideally, you would have had the regular Warrior 2 in your practice from Kinesiolyoga or level 1 in Steel Mace Vinyasa. Other variations, you got your drop swings. Actually, we'll do big wheel in Warrior 2. That comes before the drop swings. Here, doing a power breath on the work face. Other fun variations, Warrior 2, big wheel, back to order, horizontal overhead, drop swing. So there's a ton of awesome movement patterns you can explore with a Mace. I think of the Mace as an extension of my body. How can I train these different degrees of freedom? How can I add the complexity? How can I integrate that flow state into my whole movement practice so that I really look forward to it and I'm learning something new every time and I'm challenging myself and pushing my edge. So that's a little glimpse into what my personal flow practice looks like. And this is something I would do on my moderate intensity day. It's not a high intensity. I'm going to be doing conditioning. I'm going to be really pushing myself into 80 to 85% of heart rate max. Here I'm just working simple to complex and really working on that neuroplasticity, training neural load and getting those repetitions in so that I can flow without thought and really tap into my highest self. So I hope that this was informative for you. Feel free to leave some comments. Chat with me if you have any questions. You can find me at flowshala.com or flowshala on Instagram. Namaste.